Today, I'm going to share with you the top 9 teams of Regulation I. And not only that, but I'm going to give you multiple pastes with rental codes for each and every one of them. Each of these archetypes has seen success at some point in Regulation I. They have seen development over the course of the format, so multiple different versions have been tried out. And I'm going to talk you through the progression of each of these archetypes, what might be good moving forward as we play this for at least a month, if not longer, at regionals. And yeah, let's jump into it. So the first team that I want to talk about is Ho-Oh. Ho-Oh saw a decent amount of success in the start of the format. I believe there were 4 in top cut of Milwaukee regionals, one of which was me. I top cut, Poke-Aim top cut, and Michael Zhang also top cut with this absolutely wild take on Ho-Oh. It was supposed to be good because it has a really high special defense stat and resists all of Zamazenta's moves and can burn it. So in theory, it is very good into the Zamazenta Calyrex Shadow combination. It's also okay into Ice Rider because, again, it has that burn chance and hits super effectively, but is, a little weaker to the Miraidon that is usually paired with it. In fact, that's its big weakness is Miraidon. It also still can get overpowered by Shadow Riders if they get a boost off, either through Nasty Plot or through Grimnay. And so it struggled to find its footing after this tournament, until the World Championship, where one did manage to sneak into top 16 with the Koraidon variant, which was not super common, but a much more offensive version of Ho-Oh did really well, which is, cool to see and maybe something that we might see more of. This was something that was on the fringes of the format, but it is the 9th best team for a reason. I wouldn't expect to see a ton of Ho-Oh, and yeah, I wouldn't say if you're picking up this format for the first time that you should necessarily jump in with Ho-Oh because it does have some pretty significant flaws that are pretty tough to overwrite. The 8th best archetype is another one that was really popular early in the format, and that is the Calyrex Shadow Terapagos combination. We saw the Combine Leftovers Terapagos build everywhere at the start of the format. I mean, it was really, really common, even going into the North American Championships. But it didn't do very well and kind of fell off. And I think people figured out better Pokemon to be Click and Combined with, or better partners for the Terapagos Click and Combined, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But in theory, the Calyrex Shadow with Encore and Disable, or with just, the ability to do a lot of damage, should create a lot of space for Terapagos to set up. And so the original team was basically exclusively a Terapagos setup team. It had its Focus Sash support Calyrex. A little later on, we see the Grassy Seed Terapagos, which has a similar idea. This is what Santino used at the North American Championships, and still has that Combine, but now has a Life Orb Calyrex and is using all these support tools not only to support the Terapagos but also the Calyrex, which can is a big threat. You got to deal with that before you deal with the Terapagos, right? It can weaken the right Pokemon so Terapagos can sweep. And then the other thing that we saw is that people started, becoming more and more aggressive with this core. So we see the Choice Specs Terapagos team with Smeargle, which was starting to pick up towards the end of the format a little bit. And then we also saw the Meteor Beam version with Smeargle, which was not really a thing, but did get top 64 at the World Championships. Max did that. And so maybe also something that I wanted to call out, because these are obviously almost the same 6 Pokemon, right? It's Whimsicott versus Tornadus, but Power Herb did really well at the World Championships. Pretty cool to see. Again, not my top choice. I think it is pretty flawed, but the Calyrex Terapagos combination continues to see results, and they do support each other pretty well. It's just that Terapagos is such a Terrahog, and that's so hard to do in this format, and there's so many other Terrahogs in this format that you could pair that. So Calyrex doesn't really need to use his Terra as nearly as much, which is kind of nice, but I digress. Number 7. Now we start to get to the teams that I think are really, really good moving forward, and have seen a lot more success, in my opinion. And this is at the bottom end because this did not actually see a lot of success early in the format. It was something that was hyped up a lot early in the format, the Koraidon Calyrex Ice combination, and I put a version of the Chiyu Flutter Koraidon because that was kind of the standard version that you'd expect to see early in the format. Not so much with the Leftovers Calyrex Ice. That was a later innovation, but maybe the thing that this team needed to be developed, I guess. But yeah, it was a thing, and it had some pretty big weaknesses overall. I think it really had a bad Ice Rider mirror matchup, if I recall correctly, was one of the big issues. That's why you had a Rock Pond on there. But we see Hirofumi brought it back at the World Championships after not having a ton of results going into the World Championships, and actually got top 4 with it at the World Championships. And I think I think someone said he had a pretty favorable matchup spread. Again, I do think this team has a little bit more of a swingy matchup spread potentially. But yeah, definitely one of the teams to look out for now. I think Koraidon especially had a really strong World Championship performance, and people are testing out all sorts of different Koraidon variants. This is, of course, one of them that did very well, and I expect to see more of because it is a little bit of a fan favorite, and honestly, so easy to play. I mean, not like easy to play perfectly, but like if you need a team to turn your brain off a little bit and just click some buttons, this is one of them. Especially like the standard version. And then also I kind of categorize the Groudon teams in the same sphere here. I think Groudon is a little higher variance, right? With all the moves that can miss on this team. Precipice Blades, you got Heat Waves, you got High Earth Powers and Draco Meteors, and right. So you can give a lot of, and God forbid you're clicking Sleep Powder, right? Like, so you got some moves that can miss, and so you don't necessarily. I'm just realizing Justin's every single Pokemon has a move that can miss. So I think that, a lot of players are hesitant to bring this to a regional level tournament, whereas at the World Championships, where you are hunting for margins a little more, where you're playing against some of the best players in the world, and any edge you can get is something that's really nice. I think that's why more people brought Koraidon and Groudon to the World Championships, where they do have a little swingier matchup spreads, and if you hit your matchups and it's your day, then maybe you can win the World Championships. Of course, Justin using a really high variance team when I think he is one of the best players in the world, but he made this public super cool team with Jumpluff. I think it's similar to what Junchi used to get top 8 at Portland Regionals, if I recall correctly. So this team was around. And then on the other hand, we also have what Vikram used to get top 4 at Senior Worlds, using Smeargle and using a Clear Amulet on the Groudon instead. And I think a much more aggressive version of the Sun team as compared to the version that has Leech Seed and has support Pokemon and Jumpluff. This team just kind of tries to go all out, I think, a little more. So, yeah, this is definitely a team I would expect to see a little more of, but I still think it is not one of the top archetypes. And, if I went into a tournament saying I have a bad Sun Ice Rider matchup, I would not feel the worst about it, which I guess is how it manages to get to top 4 overall sometimes, right? Because a lot of people could say that. That's what a Metacall is. Number 6, this is another team that seen a lot more play. I mentioned the Terapagos with Calm Mind and Calyrex Shadow, but now we've introduced a third group to the mix. What if Miraidon was actually the support Pokemon, and either Calyrex Shadow or Terapagos was clicking Calm Mind? The Calm Mind Terapagos with Sinistra was something that I think Sitchit, Francisco Piopero, had used and top cut the North American Championships. I believe he top cut Bologna, this special event there, with it as well. So it was really picking up in usage towards the end of the format, with a few Italians, deciding this was the play. And it was a cool team. They had a couple of versions of it that they went through and did quite well with it. And I expect to see more people try this out. On the other hand, you have the Calyrex Shadow with Calm Mind that I believe Tia Time used to top cut the World Championships as well. He beat me at the World Championships there. This is not his team, and neither Sitchit nor Tia Time made their team public, and so these are recreations of their teams, but they're very similar conceptually. And yeah, I love Calm Mind, Covert Cloak, Calyrex, after top cutting Los Angeles Regionals with it way back in the day. And so I do love this set, and it's just very, very methodical, very bulky, very hard to power through, and you are putting a lot of your eggs in the Calyrex Shadow basket, so you do have to play that very precisely. And then on the other hand, we also saw a couple other Pokemon click Calm Mind. These are more fringe, but I wanted to share them anyways. The first is my friend Ethan, not top cut. He lost the Winnin at Portland Regionals on stream. The Winnin with Calm Mind, Parabolic Charge, Miraidon, which was super cool. We have a short on our channel that where he talks about it a little bit, and yeah, it's just a really cool team, really cool concept. Maybe we'll see more of Calm Mind Miraidon. Similarly, we saw Calm Mind Lunala, not the most common Lunala variant, but this did see a little more play in, I think, best of 1 in closed team sheet. And if the team that I have here is a closed team sheet team that did very well in the battle spot ladder. But I think I used this in a GC because I thought, for the same reason, hey, no one's going to expect my Lunala to click Calm Mind. So it is a thing you can do. And if we do get to play some best of 1 in this format, maybe make sure to consider that it is also a potential combine partner next to Miraidon, on top of all the other things that Lunala has the ability to do. Next up, we got Rain. Rain did not see a lot of play early in the format, but then picked up a lot towards the middle of the format before not really having a great World Championships. Gavin has a team report with me on my channel that I'll link in the description, where he won Portland Regionals and shared all the details about his team and exactly how to use his team. And a couple people worked with him, Nick and Cedric, and top cut the World Championships with variants of this team. In particular, I think Nick had a Urshifu over the Basque Legion. So this is an old version, but this is the version that we have the team report for. We also had Carrie at the exact same tournament get top 4 with a slightly more aggressive version of the team with an Iron Jugulus and with the Life Orb Urshifu. I guess it's not that much more aggressive, but it does have the Seed Bomb Terra Grass Calyrex instead of the Leech Seed Calyrex, which is, a pretty big factor there. And then on the other hand, at Utrecht, we also saw 2 in top cut. Nick Holmer, I think, was the 1 seed after Swiss and used a super crazy hyper offensive Miraidon Kyogre Serena team that I never saw do well again, but it was a really cool idea, and he shared the rental code. And then similarly, Kyogreization was an hyper offensive archetype that saw a smattering of play. We see Ethox top 8'd Utrecht regionals with that. And so another Kyogre team. Kyogre team's pretty diverse, all things considered. You mostly see it with Calyrex Ice, but it is a Pokemon that can, work with a lot of different teams, especially with the rise of Koraidon. I think maybe using a restricted to counteract the increase in Sun might be something that more people do. And now I think we get to what I think are really the big 4 of the format. I would really not want to go into a tournament with a bad matchup into one of these 4, and I think this is the 4th out of those 4. That being Koraidon CSR. I think the top 3 are maybe, S tier, and this is like A tier. Maybe Kyogre's A tier. I don't know. But yeah, we got Koraidon Calyrex Shadow Rider, of course. And you can see the how much better these results are compared to some of the other slides, right? James Evans got 2nd at the World Championships with this team. We have a team report as well, so if you want to learn a lot more about this team, you should watch our team report. That will be linked in the description once as well. Mao Harada also got top 8 at the World Championships with a different take on Koraidon Calyrex Shadow. Zach Minch got top 32 at the World Championships with a Tinglu on the Calyrex Shadow Clefairy team, which he and Toller worked on that one together. And then also I think the version of this team that really put it on the map initially was the team that Zhe Zhang used to get 2nd place at Portland Regionals with the Weezing and the Walking Wake. I think this is also, I forget if Walking Wake was on the team that won Melbourne Regionals, but the Weezing Calyrex Shadow Koraidon was also of the team that won Melbourne Regionals, I believe, a week prior to this. Fun fact, Zhe was also one of my losses at Portland Regionals. All 3 of my losses at that tournament were to Calyrex Shadow Speed Ties in Game 3. But yeah, he gave me my 2nd loss, I believe. And so, yeah, again, Calyrex Shadow does have that one big downside. We haven't talked about it a lot, but it does KO itself, and that is a little frustrating to play the mirror. You got to have a contingency plan in the mirror, and I think these Koraidon teams tend to have better contingency plans than most, right? You see Tinglu, or you see the ability to maybe tank one with Terra Dark, and with, you see Brute Bonnet, Scarf Chiyu, like a lot of these different tools that do a lot better into Calyrex Shadow than the classic Calyrex Shadow Zamazenta team that we will talk about in a little bit. So maybe that is a reason to use the Koraidon version. I think a lot of CSR Zamazenta players are maybe a little scared of Koraidon. That's why it did so well at the World Championships. And then, not only that, but also Koraidon Ursaluna did quite well at the World Championships, which is the next thing that we're going to talk about. The Lunala Ursaluna core. And it sounds a little weird to put those together, because obviously Geo won the World Championships with Koraidon Lunala Ursaluna, but Miraidon Ursaluna Lunala was also everywhere from the very start of the format. It was so common. It won the very first regional of the format. Andrew Ding won that tournament. He also beat me in top cut of that tournament. And then it won the North American International Championships, which is Fede. And I believe Fede used a very similar team to the one you see on screen, which is what Ko used at the World Championships to get top 8. But at the end of the day, these teams kind of operate in similar ways, right? You've got your, I mean, you've got your Lunala and you've got your Scarlet and Violet restricted Pokemon, but also more specifically, you've got your sort of support restricted Pokemon combined with a really, really like hard hitter. And because you're using a support restricted Pokemon, it means that you are allowed to use like a second hard hitter that isn't a restricted Pokemon, which is in this case Ursaluna, that your support Pokemon facilitates. And so these teams do work very similarly, even though they have very different counterplay and like obviously very different like Pokemon on them. I really think that these have kind of been like pretty close to standardized. They haven't changed a lot over the course of the format. They've made small innovations over time, small changes to adapt over time, but these have not changed a lot. And I think if you want to pick up a team and grind it, and if you're the person who wants to play 1,000 ladder games with one team, like Fede Campo when he won the North American Championships, this is a team, or honestly Gio, because he one-tricked this core, made some small changes over time, but he one-tricked this core the entire format, right? You can see how getting a lot of reps in with a team of this style can help you do really well. And so I think this is one of the top 3 teams in the format. You can debate the order of the top 3 all you want. You could argue this is the best team in the format. Given its results, it won the 2 biggest tournaments of the format, but I don't think it is the team that most people are scared of going into Regulation I Part 2. And that is, of course, the number 1 team. But first, we got to talk about the number 2 team. And so I really think there's an argument that number 2 and 3 you can put in any order you want. But Miraidon Ice Rider was the boogeyman for a whole bunch of the format. This felt like the team to beat, along with CSR Zamazenta. And he got second place at the first regional of the format with the Scarf Miraidon alongside Calyrex Ice and I believe Volcarona all the way back in Milwaukee. I pulled up the version that got top 64 at the World Championships. That is pretty similar. Obviously, it's changed a lot over the course of the entire format's development, but Scarf Miraidon with Ice Rider kicked off the format with a bang and is still quite good, still around. But then the real team that I think made everyone start respecting this a lot more was the team that Michael Derbesti used to win Utrecht Regionals. The code is down. Go bother Michael. He's also a YouTuber, also a streamer. Go tell him to put the code back up, and I'll update the code in the description down below. But this is too important to the history of this format for me not to include. But yeah, first off, this is what popularized the lead seed Calyrex Ice a lot. I think that and Gavin winning Portland with it made it so that was the de facto, the most common set. And it made it so Calyrex Ice went from losing to Zamazenta to beating Zamazenta with lead seed and with leftovers recovery, which is a big part of why you see it everywhere in this format. And so on a team like this that might need help against Zamazenta a little bit, it's 1v1s it, and it does that really well. And on the other hand, it's using the same sort of defensive Miraidon core that we've seen a lot of, where people don't want to play Miraidon speed ties, so they say I'm going to go bulky. And then set screens up. We saw a lot of that at Milwaukee. We saw that on the Lunala team. And then have my Calyrex Ice, my Miraidon, and maybe a bulky Urshifu as my heavy hitters. And so, yeah, just a really strong team, a team that maybe is a little outdated now, but was so important for the development of this format. And now I think Calyrex Ice, Miraidon players, after a little bit of a disappointing World Championships, will need to go back to the drawing board. And one place they could go is the team that got top 16 at the World Championships, the only Calyrex Ice Miraidon team to top cut the World Championships. And it was with Sneasler on it. Now, we have seen a little bit of Sneasler Miraidon Calyrex Ice in this format. It was the team that I think Carson Confer used to top cut the North American Championships, but it was not super common. But it was the only one that top cut the World Championships. And with the Electric Seed, Sneasler can go really fast. It has Throat Chop, I believe, to KO Calyrex Shadow Rider and really put a lid on that threat in the early game. Electric Seed plus the Resist for Zamazenta makes it really good in that matchup. And then in this case, we also have a Scarf Ditto to really, really run down that matchup. And then meanwhile, you've got the boys that Michael is using and everyone is essentially using on these teams, which is Incineroar, Urshifu, Miraidon, Calyrex Ice to round it out. And so it is cool to see kind of how this team is built, and maybe we'll see more Sneasler moving forward. And then the last version I wanted to call out is the Iron Tread version. This is what Springs used to get top 4 at the Korean National Championships. But yeah, we just see a few Iron Treads here and there pop up with Miraidon Calyrex Ice, and it is one of my favorite Pokemon, so I did want to show that it can has a place in this format as well. And then last but not least, the best team in the format. Even though it didn't win the World Championships, I think this is still not a hot take. It got top 4 and top 8 at the multiple and top 8 at the World Championships, I believe. Of course, we've got what Montana used to get top 4 at the World Championships, and just this variant. He, Sanvi, and Chappa, I believe, all top cut with the same team. And also, Michael Derbesti used very similar team. He had one Pokemon different to top 8 the World Championships and played a very exciting set with Montana in that top 8. And so this is the new team to beat, in my opinion. It was the best performing team at the World Championship in general, like overall, like the team that Montana used, or that style of Calyrex Shadow Zamazenta team. But honestly, like the version that you see next to it with Cian, you getting second place at Senior Worlds, was also everywhere all format. This was the team that got second at the North American Championships, and again, like was the boogeyman going into the World Championships. The super consistent, nasty plot Calyrex Shadow team. I believe it got second at which regional did Lewis get second at with this team? I believe. Anyways, this team super common, very very strong, couple different versions of it, and to make matters worse, there were just you could also just put a Smeargle on the same core. And that's what Longyu did to get top 32 at Worlds. He also beat me at the World Championships. And in that game 3, I remember him getting some pretty consequential Moody boosts. But that's the thing about Smeargle, because he would play it like, he would literally just go for double protects in the middle of the game when he didn't necessarily need to, just because sometimes it works out super well. And so, eventually you're going to get rewarded for it. If you play long enough games, you will get the boost that you need to win the game. And so there is some skill to using it, although it can definitely feel like you don't have a lot of agency playing against it. And that's why it is, one of the strongest teams in the format. And not necessarily the version that did the best at the World Championships, but definitely one that I would want to have a matchup for, because Smeargle is pretty miserable to play against. And then last but not least, I have the version that Lewis Tan used to get top 4 at Melbourne Regionals with Instant Amoonguss. This isn't the most standard version of Instant Shroom Calyrex, but it is the one that I found. And it is a little weaker, I think, than the Hearthflame versions, but also has its own unique strengths. And so I think that, this case, it has Rillaboom and Amoonguss, so the doubling down on the grass types. You don't necessarily need to have a Rillaboom if you have an Amoonguss. Just another version to consider. But yeah, this is Calyrex Shadow Zamazenta. Zamazenta creating those pins with the fighting type coverage to stop you from switching into Astro Barrage is part of why this team is so omnipresent. So good this format. I can't believe I didn't have a version with Tornadus on it. Tornadus was pretty common on these teams as well. But yeah, we see different versions of this team do pretty consistently well. This is the team to beat in this format. We've got a bunch of paste in the description, so make sure to check all of them out. Or I guess not all of them out. That would take a long time to check all of them out. But the ones that you are most interested in, and then maybe if you decide that team isn't it, you can try out a different team. I don't know. You know what to do. And while you're down there, like, comment, subscribe, all the standard YouTube stuff. Thank you for watching. Shout out to my channel members. Y'all are awesome. And until next time, I'll see you all later.